If you're using psychology jargon to justify sneaking around, attempting to damage others' relationships, and lying to people who love you, and you ask me for tough love, then buckle your seatbelt. Because if you have to twist your explanation of hurting and using others to get your so-called needs met, you don't even need me to confront you. Life is about to smack you down. But on the off chance you want to avoid hurting everyone involved, I'll give you my tough advice. My letter today is from a man I'll call Mason. And he writes, "Hi, Anna. Is it possible that truly happy families exist? And if so, should I seek closeness to someone from such a family to heal?" All right, I've got my fairy pencil here. I'm going to circle things I want to come back to on a second reading. But first, let's go through and see what Mason's story is. I have a fiance. We are in our mid-30s. We both have good jobs, many friends, and are very active. But I believe I may carry unhealed wounds from childhood emotional neglect. My mother would sometimes stop speaking to me for weeks when she was angry, often for reasons I didn't understand. That neglect still shapes parts of my life. My fiance had very strict parents, but they are very educated and were always supportive. Nowadays, she has an okay connection with them. She is a lighthearted and warm person. Due to our jobs, we currently live relatively independent lives in a semi-long distance relationship, commuting between two big cities. We see each other on average 3 days a week. 3 years ago, my father was diagnosed with cancer. I told a female colleague, a few years younger, about it. She said her partner had lost his own father to cancer and offered to talk. We started having coffee breaks once or twice a week, stretching them to an hour. Since then, I've been caught in a limerent spiral over her, which has lasted for the past 6 months. 3 months ago, my father died and I didn't feel pain, just relief. The grief had already stretched across the 3 years of illness, but I began to grieve my relationship with my mother. My siblings and I barely talk, and there was little emotional support in our family through any of this. This colleague, on the other hand, seemed kind and grounded and came from a perfect small-town world. Daily phone calls with her parents, strict routines, and a boyfriend she seems to manage like a child. She makes him follow the same rules she grew up with, such as when and how much candy he can eat, and when to get up on weekends. He didn't like that she tells her parents everything about their relationship and his personal issues, but he eventually gave in. He lives in her apartment since 2 years ago, and she cleans up after him. Sometimes he even calls her because he can't find his things. My colleague and I began meeting outside of work, hiking, swimming, talking about relationships. She once asked how mine was going. I started to believe she might have feelings for me too. But then she forgot things I had already told her, my age, my stance on kids. She never flirted. She didn't remember key things, and I had to admit to myself she doesn't feel the same. Still, I remained obsessed, not because I loved her, but because I envied her. I envied her close relationship with her family and especially envied her boyfriend because he had a place in that family. I didn't want to be loved by her as a man. I wanted to be taken in, cared for like a lost son. Now I'm beginning to see this for what it is. It's not love, but emotional regression. I don't need to be adopted. I'm an adult, and I want to keep growing. What haunts me is this. Nearly everyone I've met has opened up at some point about personal struggles, about their families, insecurities, or past pain. And that always made them feel human to me. But this woman never did. It's like she lives in a perfect world, and it's driving me crazy. So here's my question. Do truly happy families like hers actually exist? The kind where people grow up feeling safe and fully loved? If so, is it logical for me to seek a partner from such a family so at least future children have one mentally healthy parent? I understand that I shouldn't crave a partner who tells me when and how much candy I'm allowed to eat or when to get up on weekends. But what now? I know that going no contact can break limerence. But how would breaking contact with her help heal my internal wounds? I may need some tough love here. From my perspective, it would only take away a mirror in which I can clearly see my unmet needs. Sure, wouldn't real healing come from transforming the limerence into an authentic friendship, one where I can see her and her family realistically rather than cutting off contact and being left with the impression that perfect people and families exist and that I don't belong among them? Best from Mason. Okay, Mason, I told you it's going to be tough love. I'm a little bit hoping that when you heard me read your letter aloud, you could maybe hear what it says, or you've watched enough of my videos and my letters to kind of predict what I'm going to say. So when you said I might need some tough love here, okay. Okay, I got it for you. All right. You have a fiance. What are you doing? Hanging out with this other woman and obsessing on her for 6 months and swimming and hiking. This is so unfair, so dishonest. So I first just have to say, you have a fiance, and either you're going to commit to that relationship, which is a plan to be married, or you're going to end that relationship because it doesn't sound to me like you have any commitment to that relationship at all. Now, when I sit here and get letters, I'm not a therapist, but even a therapist wouldn't have information about this to be able to say. I just hear a huge rationale for why you don't have to do anything at all that's uncomfortable for you, and this weird psychological case for why it would help you to obsess on this other woman who's in a relationship with a boyfriend. You're actually hurting their relationship too. So this response to you is going to involve calling you out, and a little bit I'm going to address your stuff. Your mom, I'm sorry that she was so distant, right? You believe that you might carry unhealed wounds from childhood emotional neglect. Sometimes your mother would stop speaking to you for weeks when she was angry, often for reasons you didn't understand. Okay, and it still shapes parts of your life. Okay, fair enough. That hurts. That's a hard thing for a child. You didn't say how old you were, but if you were a little child, that would be terrible. And it's not very nice to anybody who's in our lives at all. And I consider the silent treatment emotional abuse. So I get it. You had trauma. I had trauma. I was also very neglected. But I'll tell you what never helped me is rationalizing bad behavior against other people. What helped me was healing my wounds, which is an inside job. It doesn't come from magical relationships or kind of like side person things. It just doesn't work like that. I guess, I have a bit of a thing. It's all the psychological jargon about unmet needs and a mirror. And also what I think is a fake question here. I don't really buy your question at face value, that your question is, do perfect families exist? I don't think that's your question. I think you're asking me about this relationship and do I think you should make a go for it? Forgive me, but all the energy in your letter is towards that and not towards, are there happy families? I don't know. I wouldn't know. I didn't have a great family. I've never met a perfect family. If there are any, I've met some functional families, but I don't know. I guess with my eyes, I do notice that even in families that seem perfect for the first 10 minutes, one of the parents could be very controlling. One has trouble standing up for themselves. One of them is a little bit addicted to work. Nobody is perfect. But I know you know that. And this idealization of a perfect family and candy and strictness, it's it's just a style that people have of relating. And perhaps it was helpful and the opposite of neglect. But you trying to get that from a partner is like doomed from the start, because a partner is not your parent. The sad thing is, and you said you were going to grieve your mom here, and some of the language too with grieving, you sound like somebody who's had a lot of therapy. And I do hope your therapist helped you understand that your childhood is over and you can't actually go back and be a child and have somebody else parent you. Some people like to do inner child stuff. I don't really do that myself. I, just got into like caring for myself, learning how to re-regulate my nervous system, and then solving problems so that I could show up and be present for other people and really care about them and be sensitive to my effect on them, and then be mindful of what's in my best interest getting into a relationship. Does this fit what I know is important to me in a relationship? Now, what you're describing where, you just want to be mothered by this woman and, have some feeling with her, I'm just going to be honest with you. It sounds like kink. It does. It sounds like kink. And if you want to have a kinky relationship, that's fine. But I want you, if you're going to do that, I want you to talk to your fiance and see how she feels about that. And I want you to talk to this other woman and her boyfriend and see how they feel about it. Because something tells me this is totally like inside. It's a very internal thing. And, you're knocking around with it because you must know on some level, you can't do this. And I don't know. I know that some people can have an unusual or a dominant relationship with somebody by mutual consent. I just don't think that's what you've set up here. You've set up a secret relationship where you're limerent on a woman who's in a relationship and who has made it clear through direct language, the act of forgetting about what your preferences are, that that's not how she feels about you. And so usually if you're hiding how you really feel about somebody and you're disappointed because they turn out, you're getting clues that they're not into it, and you keep going with, some fantasy of how it could be with them, yes, that's limerence. Limerence is toxic. It's very toxic for everybody. From what you say, she doesn't know you've done a good job of hiding it. But what would happen if you told her that you think about her this much and that you have this fantasy and you're so thinking about how she treats her boyfriend? I think it would be uncomfortable for her. And I think you know that, and I think that's why you're not open about it. I think. So you can give it a try. When people are limerent, one thing they can do is disclose how they feel to the other person. And I think that that's tricky if somebody's in a relationship because it could really upset their relationship. But at least you get your complete answer of, do they have feelings for you? I think you got your answer. She doesn't have interest in you. But here's the other thing that's really bothering me is this belief that you're holding. And gosh, I hope some therapist didn't tell you this, that this was it, is that you could heal your limerence by having a friendship with her and have her be a mirror so that you could see your clearly unmet needs. I'm just like, oh my gosh, how many calories does it burn for you to come up with that justification for, just horning in on somebody else's relationship and lying to your fiance? I'm not buying it, Mason. I'm just not buying it. I care about you. I want you to be happy and I want you not to hurt people. And I think that right now you're in a pretty confused place, and maybe you do need a therapist, and I hope you will find one who's a little bit tough love too and doesn't condone long-term fantasies about, making somebody else's girlfriend be a parent figure to you and nurture you and show you your unmet needs. That's not right. That's not right. That's not what anybody signed up for. A good therapist could talk to you about this and help you get clear that your unmet needs are an inside job. And there are things that a spouse can do for us. It's a very healing relationship, ideally, but not when one partner shows up completely strung out on somebody else. And it alarmed me that you didn't express any concern for your fiance and how this might be affecting her. And that is not spouse thinking. Spouse thinking, like it's really different than just somebody you're dating or sleeping with. It's somebody that you really deeply care about their well-being alongside of your own. And you're putting together a life as a team where you really care about each person's well-being. So like inherently, when you're being deceptive to that person, when you're taking the best energy you've got and giving it to somebody else on your hikes and swims, if she knew, would she stay? I'm skeptical. I know I wouldn't. A person knows. I guess I listen to my gut on these things. And if it were happening to me, I'd be out so fast. I would just go, oh, wow, that's just not something that's going to work. You didn't tell me you have some kind of a special arrangement or anything like that. And, if you have these attachment wounds that you have, and here on my channel, I recognize that people have all kinds of arrangements with other people, but I teach people how to get out of trauma-driven relationships. And I'm here for people who would like to have a good relationship or none at all right now while they prepare for a good relationship or they've decided to be single. I don't have advice for people who want to, play a bunch of cards on different tables like this. I don't have advice. I grew up in a generation that did a lot of that. And whenever I put my toe into it, it practically killed me. It was just so miserable and painful and not at all what I wanted. And when I got clear what I wanted, I could start acting in a way consistent with what I wanted. So if I don't know, I hear a lot of confusion and I encourage you. I have a list of signs that trauma may have affected the way that you have relationships. And I suspect it has, but if you want to see my list of some very common signs that trauma is like affecting the way you're thinking and acting in relationships, and it's important to look at these because they can block you from ever having a good relationship. And if that's what you want, that would be very sad. So if you want to get that list, I'll put it down in the very first link in the description section right below this video. All videos have a description section, everybody. You can just go down there. There's usually a little more button. You click that and it opens up and you can see all the links that I offer. And then other YouTubers too. They usually have good stuff down in there. So you can check that out. But at the very top, there's 2 lines you can see without opening. Top one, I'll put that quiz. Okay, so you might want to do that. You might want to check out Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous for what's compelling you to have this very kind of elaborate scheme of how you're justifying how you're going to be happy by playing all these relationships like this. That might be something you could do. You might not want any of this advice. You might just think, Anna's crazy. She's being so strict. What's the matter? I'll just say, well, do what you like, but would you please be honest with the people who you're affecting with this? There's 3 of them who are affected by what you're doing right now, and let them weigh in on whether your relationships with each of them should continue. They deserve the right to weigh in on that and to have consent about whether they want to have this going on in their lives. So I would encourage you to ask about that. So I was just going through your letter here. Just a couple things I circled was you think that it's not love, but emotional regression. I do think that what you're doing is not mature. But emotional regression sounds like a fancy word for, I don't know, acting not like an adult. That's what I think. Do you know what love is? Maybe it's not love, but maybe it's trying to get your needs met from somebody in a sneaky fashion, which is just sort of part of that's just like what's not cool. The perfect world thing. And you're asking me, is there a perfect world? And there's not. You already know that. You don't need me to tell you. The word mirror, I guess you haven't seen, I've made videos about this. There's a lot of jargon and it can come from different areas. I've seen it in religion, but there's a lot of it in new age stuff that a little bit has crossover in therapy speak of somebody as a mirror for your unmet needs. And I'm just trying to think of an example when somebody has said that. In my view, you can argue with me, everybody, but I've never seen anybody where somebody they said they say there's a mirror, but what they really are describing is a thing where they're either hurting someone or getting hurt. And I wonder too if you're getting hurt by all this too. I mean, you might lose all these relationships altogether, which would be sad. Once you're limerent on somebody though, Mason, not hanging out with them is the solution. Limerence doesn't go anywhere good. There are exceptions, but the way you're talking right now, you're nowhere near that line where it gets better. I think sometimes after a long period of time, I don't know, 10 years or something, you might see the person again and it wouldn't be the same strong thing. But a lot of times it is, that's just like the mind is sticky like that. And limerence is idealizing another person, idealizing them, and then taking all your energy, your future, your soul, your love, your spirit, all of it, you're just like throwing it into this imaginary person that's actually a black hole that doesn't exist. It's a projection of the person. And so all that energy, all that life force of yours, it just goes woo, into nothing. And your energy is precious. The energy that you use, your creative energy to like build a life, is very precious. So when it gets into fantasy to the point like this, I'm supposed to be the one, tough love. It's like, save your energy. This is not real. This is not real. You can find out what's real by talking to the people. But again, be very respectful of this second woman's existing relationship and honor that. And don't try to disrupt it. That's a very, if you believe in karma's not really my word for it, but I think karma is a common understanding of doing something that's going to come back at you and hurt you. And it is that. It's going in and trying to mess up somebody else's relationship. It's not a good thing to do. And if you want to have a good relationship, I would advise you to keep your karma very, very, very clean. You focus on the good stuff. Marriage is it's a special position in the universe. It's like being a knight. For men and women, you're there. You're really there for the other person. So I somehow feel like that marriage isn't going to come off, but we'll see, right? Maybe this will, when you're honest with yourself at least, about this, things will shift in a better way with nobody getting hurt. I sincerely hope so. I want to talk to you about self-defeating behaviors. I don't doubt that you had trauma. This neglect is certainly a thing, and it's got you kind of spinning right now. But the thing about these wounds, when they're not treated, and just because you may have done one approach to healing, if your life isn't like functioning happily right now, then, maybe you need to shift gears and have a different approach. But one thing I think helps, whatever you're going to end up doing as a methodology to deal with yourself and try to become a very truly honest and high integrity person whose emotions and intentions and words are all in line, is to think about what are the common self-defeating behaviors. Dishonesty, which this is an example of. Fantasy. These are just 2 of about 18 self-defeating behaviors that I've defined that I find to be very, very common in people like us. And when you read them, you can think about, you'll be happy because you won't have all of these. Very few people have all of them. I've had people write in and go, oh no, I have all of them. What does it mean? And I'll say, well, then start with the drinking and drugs if you have all of them, because drinking and drug problems is one of them. And I think if that's a problem, then all the other ones are very difficult to solve. And they probably have some special hierarchy for each person, like in what order should you start working on these things. But I think one will jump out at you. And I'm thinking the dishonesty and the fantasy about another person. A fantasy about another person, it's a form of avoidance, right? You're avoiding intimacy and commitment with one person by taking that part of yourself and donating it to the black hole. And then being very secretive about it and hoping it's all going to turn out great. But the self-defeating behaviors can be very helpful to see. And some of them are like black and white thinking, being driven by anger, other forms of addiction, porn, screens of all kinds, video games, phone, that sort of addiction, food, gambling, dopamine highs of all sorts. Fantasy is a dopamine high, of course. And a whole series of other ones. And if anybody wants to see my list of the self-defeating behaviors and a little description of them, and there is something you can do about them. So many of my programs and my courses, I have a dating course, men and women can take that to teach you how to heal trauma-driven patterns and date in a better way. But one thing you could do to take a look at, where is the problem getting its hooks in you? It shows up in self-defeating behaviors. And this was something I had so many of them. And back when I used to go to therapy, I wasn't getting help with this. We were focusing so much on my feelings and what happened that we weren't really getting to like these very destructive patterns that I was doing. And if nobody, she didn't call me out on them. And until I got called out on it, I did not change. So I hope my tough love message here is helpful to you to, do some self-reflection about what you actually are trying to do here and how honest you're willing to be with yourself and others. Limerent relationships. You wanted to know, how would going no contact help me heal internal wounds? It sounds like you have a fantasy that this person who's not into you will heal your internal wounds. And that does not sound true to me. Healing internal wounds is a day-by-day process where you are using tools to help face yourself, to the way this comes up, the way your thinking plays out. And you have people you trust who you can be honest with, whether it's a therapist or a 12-step group. We have a membership program here. We have a lot of connection with each other as a group, and people can help give reality checks. And it's for people who are totally ready for a change. It's not we don't get in there and try to debate people about what they should do, but for people who are trying to make a change and want some support for the constructive actions they're taking, in my program with the courses that I offer, that could be a thing to do. Whatever you do, Mason, I encourage you to be very, very honest with yourself and at least one person. If it's not with the women in your life, then with a therapist, a 12-step sponsor, or somebody you really trust who is not bought into the magical thinking that you're in right now, who is not signed on to, limerence as being some lofty thing. If you agree that this is a problem that's driving you to deceive people, then I hope you'll take very strong actions to set it right. And that may take some discernment about how much and whether you tell each person. Sometimes it's not best to tell people. This is where you need help from a mentor or therapist. So I encourage you to do that. If you like this topic, I've got another video lined up right here that I think you'll really love, and I'll see you very soon. She was addicted to drugs, you were addicted to her, and there you are. You're an addict. That's what it is. You are an addict.